Okay, first of all, I know the history behind the WNBA. I know that both of those cities have had teams before and they got us where we're at, so I'm thankful for that.
Hold on. Just 2 minutes ago, the WNBA got slapped with a reality check so massive, even the biggest haters can't ignore it anymore. The Indiana Fever social media value just hit $55 million. Let that sink in. $55 million. That's more than 5 times what any other team in the league is worth online. And if you think this is just another...
Well, if you are a Caitlin Clark fan, if you're an Indiana Fever fan, this is something you already know. However, for the haters out there, the old WNBA fandom, many of you call them the slows, for those fans, they're in complete denial.
Caitlin Clark headline. Think again. Because there's another name attached to this explosion, and she's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. Sophie Cunningham. Together, these two women didn't just change a team. They rewrote the entire economics of women's basketball, and the league is absolutely panicking right now. So here's what just dropped. Forbes released a bombshell report that nobody saw coming, and it's sending shockwaves through every front office in the WNBA.
I'm just kind of ready for the next chapter and a new challenge in my life, but I think the reason I decided to announce it when I did was just to have that...
This wasn't your typical analytics piece about ticket sales or TV ratings. No, this report did something nobody's ever done before. It put an actual dollar amount on social media influence. And when the numbers came back, the Indiana Fever were sitting at the top of a mountain so high, the rest of the league looked like they were stuck in a basement. We're talking $55.04 million in social media value. Nearly $39 million.
Boy, their posts are worth a lot of money. They are worth a lot of money, and I can tell you right now, that's a little over 5 times higher than the next WNBA team. 5 times.
Engagements. Over 1.17 billion impressions during the 2025 season alone. Those aren't typos. Those are the real numbers. And they all came from one team. Now, you might be wondering, what does social media value even mean? Here's the thing. Every post, every video, every single piece of content that the Fever puts out has a monetary worth attached to it based on engagement. Likes, shares, comments, views. All of that translates into advertising dollars.
Fever led the league with an estimated $55.04 million in social value, 38.73 million engagements, 1.17 billion impressions during the 2025.
Real money, the kind of money that makes sponsors sit up and take notice. And according to this report from SDN Digital and Zoom Analytics, the Indiana Fever are generating more value per post than teams that have been around for decades. It's not even close. Let's put this into perspective. The second place team in the league, the Dallas Wings, they brought in $8.61 million. That's it. We went from $55 million straight down to $8 million. That's not a competition. That's a massacre. And the crazy part? Most people expected the Chicago Sky to be sitting in that number 2 spot.
That was second, folks. You went from $55 million down to $8.61 million. Where's
Angel Reese has the fame, the fashion, the headlines. She's everywhere. But when the numbers dropped, Chicago was sitting at number 5 with just over $6 million. Almost $49 million, less than Indiana. The gap wasn't just big. It was embarrassing. So how did this happen? 2 words. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. But here's where it gets interesting. Everyone's been talking about the Caitlin Clark effect for months now. And sure,
search WNBA player in the league.
She's the biggest name in women's basketball. But this report revealed something the media's been sleeping on. Sophie Cunningham is the 3rd most searched WNBA player on Google. Not 5th, not 10th, 3rd. And her presence alongside Caitlin created something nobody expected. A brand, not just
Honestly, I have to admit, I thought the Chicago Sky would be second because of Angel. I did. And she was 5th.
Basketball team, but an actual cultural movement that people outside of sports started paying attention to. Let me break this down. Caitlin Clark didn't just join the WNBA. She transformed it. From the moment she stepped onto a professional court, everything she touched turned into engagement gold. Her first post-game interview, millions of views. Training footage went viral overnight. Even casual moments like high-fiving fans.
I think early on with the first couple injuries, I was like, oh, like I need to get back. I'm going to go to every road game no matter what, like whether I'm playing or not.
Or signing jerseys became full-blown social media events. The Indiana Fever quickly realized they weren't managing a basketball team anymore. They were managing a global brand built around one of the most magnetic athletes of her generation. But here's what made Caitlin different from every other superstar the league's ever seen. It wasn't just her skill. It was her connection with people. She played with emotion. She celebrated her teammates. She never acted like the spotlight was too big for her. And that authenticity, it created loyalty, the kind of loyalty that algorithms can't fake. When the Fever posted about Caitlin, the numbers didn't just go up. They exploded. Views in the millions. Comments flooding in from every corner of the internet. Engagement rates higher than entire NBA teams. This wasn't a hot streak. This was a new era, and Caitlin was leading it. Now, while Caitlin became the face of this revolution, Sophie Cunningham quietly turned into its heartbeat. Once seen as just a fiery role player, Sophie evolved into one of the most recognizable personalities in the league. Her confidence, her humor, her unapologetic attitude. Fans didn't just watch Sophie. They connected with her. She understood social media better than most athletes. Every post felt real. Every interaction felt genuine. And during the Fever's rise, her online presence exploded. Google searches spiked. Highlight reels gained millions of views. Brands started lining up. From Arby's to lifestyle companies, Sophie showed that charisma could be just as valuable as stats. And when you paired her with Caitlin's unprecedented reach, that's when things got dangerous. Together, they formed the league's most dynamic duo. Caitlin brought the numbers. Sophie brought the personality. Their chemistry on and off the court was impossible to fake. Clips of them celebrating, joking, or encouraging each other went viral almost instantly. Fans began associating the Indiana Fever not just with basketball success, but with fun, authenticity, and unity, a formula that no other WNBA team had cracked. As one insider put it, Caitlin built the empire, but Sophie gave it a soul. And that combination sent the entire WNBA into uncharted territory. But not everyone's celebrating. As the Fever social media numbers kept climbing, the rest of the league couldn't hide its frustration. What began as admiration for Caitlin's rise quickly turned into resentment. Rival fan bases dismissed her success as hype. Players who had spent years building their reputations started making subtle digs in interviews, claiming the media only cared about one player. But the data didn't lie. 55 million versus 8 million. That kind of gap couldn't be ignored. Inside locker rooms across the league, jealousy grew louder. Teams that once felt untouchable, like the Las Vegas Aces and the Chicago Sky, were suddenly being overshadowed. Sponsors who used to spread their budgets evenly across multiple teams were now funneling their attention toward Indiana. It wasn't personal. It was business. The fans had spoken, and Caitlin Clark's brand power was undeniable. But what made the situation even more volatile was Sophie's rapid rise. Her presence gave the Fever a second wave of attention that the league didn't see coming. Together, the two women weren't just generating engagement. They were redefining what success looked like in women's basketball. And here's what really shook the WNBA's foundation. Caitlin and Sophie weren't relying on league marketing or traditional PR. They were creating their own narratives and controlling their own spotlight. This independence exposed something league executives had been trying to hide. The WNBA had become dependent on a few personalities. And if one team could drive nearly all the attention, what did that say about everyone else? Media members started tiptoeing around the subject, careful not to sound bitter. But the truth was clear to anyone paying attention. The old guard of the WNBA was losing control of the narrative. Caitlin and Sophie weren't just stars. They were a movement, and the rest of the league was struggling to keep up. What the Fever accomplished online in a single season felt more like the work of a global entertainment brand than a small market WNBA team. With Caitlin and Sophie leading the charge, the Fever mastered digital storytelling in ways the rest of the league couldn't replicate. Every photo, every caption, every video was crafted to feel authentic. Not polished, not corporate, but real. Fans felt like they were part of the journey, not just spectators watching highlights. And that emotional connection turned into record-breaking numbers. Billions of impressions, tens of millions of engagements. A valuation higher than most professional sports franchises could dream of. Behind the scenes, this wasn't an accident. The Fever worked closely with STN Digital, a social media strategy firm that helped them turn every piece of content into measurable value. They analyzed when fans were most active, which moments sparked reactions, and what emotional beats hit hardest. Whether it was a slow-motion shot of Caitlin draining a three-pointer or a clip of Sophie joking in the locker room, every moment served a purpose. Fans clicked, shared, and commented, and every interaction added to the team's growing digital empire. Meanwhile, rival teams tried to catch up. They hired agencies. They launched new campaigns. They even mimicked the Fever's posting style. But none of them could recreate the magic, because it wasn't just strategy, it was personality. Caitlin and Sophie had become cultural figures, not just athletes. Their authenticity couldn't be replicated through corporate branding. And the Fever's dominance online started to influence everything off the court. Ticket sales soared. Merchandise sold out. Broadcast partners began giving Indiana prime coverage. The Fever weren't just the most followed team. They were the most profitable, proving that in the digital age, attention equals currency. The WNBA had finally discovered its gold mine, but it belonged entirely to the Fever. And that realization sent shockwaves through the rest of the league. Now, let's talk about Angel Reese for a second. For months, fans and analysts assumed that Angel and the Chicago Sky would be the WNBA's next big digital powerhouse. She had the fame. She had the fashion. She had the following. On paper, it made sense. Angel was one of the most talked about athletes in women's sports. But when the numbers dropped, the truth was hard to ignore. Despite all the headlines, the Sky ranked only 5th in total social media value, pulling in just over $6 million. Nearly $49 million less than Indiana. The gap wasn't small. It was humiliating. While Angel continued to dominate off the court with sponsorships and brand deals, the Fever were turning every post into real financial value. It wasn't just about fame anymore. It was about engagement that converted. The Fever's content didn't rely on controversy or fashion statements. It was built around emotion, teamwork, and authentic connection. Fans weren't following just one player. They were rallying around a story. An Angel's situation highlighted a painful truth for the rest of the league. Individual popularity doesn't automatically translate into team success. The Fever's rise wasn't just about Caitlin Clark's star power. It was about how the entire organization embraced storytelling. They didn't chase clicks. They built community. Each post felt like a conversation with fans, not a sales pitch. And that difference created loyalty. And loyalty created value. Behind closed doors in Chicago, executives were stunned. Their social team worked overtime to reverse the trend, but nothing could close the gap. The Fever had changed the rules, and everyone else was playing catch-up. Even Angel Reese's most viral moments couldn't compete with the Fever's consistent connection with fans. The numbers sent a clear message to the entire WNBA. Hype fades, but authenticity lasts. And if the league wasn't already paying attention, one number forced everyone to wake up. $733,000. That's how much a single Indiana Fever YouTube video was valued at. One upload, one piece of content worth nearly $750,000 in media value. No other WNBA team had ever come close to that figure. It was the kind of number usually reserved for NBA highlight reels or NFL game recaps. Not a women's basketball team from Indiana. And that's what made it historic. The Fever's YouTube channel had become a gold mine of content. Every game recap, locker room celebration, and behind-the-scenes moment turned into viral engagement. Clips featuring Caitlin's game-winning shots or Sophie's fiery reactions consistently dominated trending pages. The comment sections overflowed with fans from every state, and even international viewers saying they had never cared about the WNBA until now. That kind of organic reach is something money can't buy. Content creators across YouTube started taking notice too. Sports channels began reacting to Fever clips, breaking down plays, analyzing Caitlin's impact. The Fever's digital presence was no longer confined to official platforms. It had bled into mainstream sports culture. Even NBA fans, traditionally indifferent to the WNBA, found themselves sharing Fever content. That $733,000 video became a symbol of how powerful digital storytelling could be when fueled by genuine passion. For the first time, executives saw that viral engagement wasn't a fluke. It was a business model inside WNBA headquarters that numbers circulated like wildfire. If one video could be worth nearly $1 million, what would happen if every team learned to replicate the Fever's formula? It wasn't just impressive, it was a warning. The future of the league now lived online. The $55 million revelation didn't just make headlines. It flipped the entire business model of women's basketball on its head. For decades, the WNBA relied on traditional revenue streams like ticket sales, TV rights, and sponsorships. But Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham exposed a new kind of power: digital currency. The Fever's online empire proved that attention itself was a form of profit. Every view, every comment, every viral post turned into measurable financial value. What the Fever built wasn't luck. It was a blueprint for the future of sports marketing. Executives around the league scrambled to understand it. Suddenly, social media wasn't just for fan engagement. It was a financial asset. Teams began hiring digital strategists, brand consultants, and data analysts, all trying to decode the Fever's formula. But what they didn't realize was that this success couldn't be duplicated through analytics alone. The Fever's rise came from authenticity, the chemistry between Caitlin and Sophie, the emotional storytelling, the connection that made fans feel like insiders instead of spectators. Sponsors took notice too. Brands that once ignored the WNBA were now lining up to partner with Indiana. Even non-sports companies wanted in, recognizing that Caitlin Clark wasn't just an athlete. She was a media powerhouse. Sophie's approachable personality and charisma turned her into a bridge between basketball culture and mainstream audiences. Together, they showed what happens when genuine star power meets smart digital strategy. But the sudden rush of attention also sparked fear inside league offices. What if the WNBA's future depended too heavily on one team? What if, without Caitlin Clark, the league's engagement numbers crashed? Those questions haunted executives who had underestimated her influence. The Fever hadn't just dominated the court. They'd exposed the league's biggest secret. One franchise was carrying the digital weight of an entire sport. The Indiana Fever's meteoric rise to a $55 million valuation wasn't an accident. It was the result of two players redefining what influence means in sports. Caitlin Clark brought global attention. Sophie Cunningham turned that spotlight into connection. Together, they changed how women's basketball is valued, viewed, and consumed. What started as a viral phenomenon became a business revolution that the WNBA can no longer ignore. The Fever didn't just win the numbers game. They exposed a truth every team must now face. In the new era of women's basketball, authenticity isn't optional. It's everything.